An unprecedented Chinese incursion into Japan's airspace raises fresh concerns about Asia-Pacific security. A former heavyweight in Taiwan's ruling party now charged with bribery and corruption.
我们向法院请求，从重量刑，希望能够量处有期徒刑12年。
We look at some of the highlights of President Lai Ching-te's first 100 days in office. Plus, caught red-handed, another Chinese spy ring is busted, but questions about Taiwan's national security loom large. A warm welcome to Taiwan Plus News. I'm Liao. Japan has deployed fighter jets after a Chinese military aircraft breached its airspace. The first time China's made such a move. Our reporter Jaime Okan explains why this represents an escalation in Chinese military activity in the region.
China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs is responding to claims from Japan that it breached its airspace on Monday. Here's what they had to say.
关于你提到的事件，中方的有关部门正在了解核实相关的情况。
This incident comes after Japan reported that a Chinese Y-9 reconnaissance plane breached its airspace near the Danzhou Islands, that's near southwestern Japan. This would be the first confirmed instance of China violating Japan's territorial airspace. Tokyo says that it responded with scrambling fighter jets and is summoning officials from the Chinese embassy to explain what happened. These Y-9 planes usually operate around Japan in Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZs. Just to be clear, these are military buffer zones, different to a country's airspace. So this means that China breaching Japan's sovereign airspace is a big deal. Here in Taiwan 2 years ago, there were concerns over what would happen if a Chinese plane passed Taiwan's ADIZ and breached Taiwan's airspace. The defense minister at the time said it would be considered a first strike and Taiwan could shoot it down. This incident is raising questions whether China is increasing its presence in this region. Now, it's up to Japan to figure out how to boost its defense and prevent an instance like this from happening again. Joseph Wu and Jaime Okan in Taipei for Taiwan Plus.
U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has arrived in Beijing for talks with Chinese officials. This is Sullivan's first visit to China in his current role and is part of efforts to ease tensions between the two superpowers. Sullivan and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi are set to discuss issues including China's claims of sovereignty over Taiwan and its support for Russia's war in Ukraine. They'll also explore the potential for a meeting between Presidents Joe Biden and Xi Jinping later this year. Former Vice Premier and heavyweight politician from the ruling Democratic Progressive Party Zheng Wen-can has been officially indicted on charges of corruption. It's the latest development in a scandal that has sent shockwaves through Taiwanese politics. Irene Lin reports.
After 47 days in police custody, Zheng Wen-can of the ruling Democratic Progressive Party is now officially indicted on charges of bribery and corruption relating to his time as mayor of Taoyuan, one of Taiwan's major metropolitan areas. Prosecutors say they've gathered enough evidence to secure charges against Zheng and 11 people involved, publishing 38 pages worth of evidence today.
郑姓被告的台北市的某居所扣得不明的大额的资金，那总共资金的额度达到678万5千元。我们认为他矢口否认相关的一个犯行哦，我们向法院请求从重量刑，希望能够量处有期徒刑12年哦。
In early July, Zheng was accused of taking bribes worth over $150,000 in a farmland rezoning scandal 7 years ago. Prosecutors took him in for questioning, but he was initially granted bail by the district court. Zheng paid a bail sum of more than $370,000 in the first 2 bail hearings, but prosecutors appealed multiple times, with a third judge ultimately ordering Zheng to be detained while prosecutors finished their investigation. With 96% of prosecutions leading to conviction in Taiwan, Zheng now has just a few months to prepare a defense and save his political career. Zhang Su and Irene Lin in Taoyuan for Taiwan Plus.
President Lai Ching-te has been in office for 100 days. His term has seen tensions with China rise and political infighting in the legislature. Louise Watt takes a look at some of the notable events during his time in office so far.
President Lai Ching-te came to power in May. In his inauguration speech, he called on China to stop politically and militarily intimidating Taiwan. But 3 days later, China launched large-scale military drills simulating a full-blown attack on Taiwan. Lai also had to quickly get to grips with strife on the domestic front when lawmakers from the opposition passed reforms increasing oversight of the government. Lai and his party are still challenging those reforms in the Constitutional Court. In July, Taiwan was hit by a deadly typhoon that caused flooding in areas in the south of the country. And then in August, Lai went to Jinmen off the Chinese coast, and he went to mark the 66th anniversary of a conflict between Taiwan and China. While there, he said that Taiwan must carry on the spirit of the soldiers who fought against China. Earlier, I spoke to an analyst who follows Taiwanese politics, and I started off by asking what stood out for him during Lai's first 100 days as president.
One is he's kind of restored the way that power is structured within both the DPP and within government. But what I mean by this is that he has heavily favored people from within his New Tide faction and people that he previously worked with in government before us. Now, this is in sharp contrast to Tsai Ing-wen, because after the Chen presidency, where the factions were brutally battling it out in the press, what she did is she put in a power-sharing formula between the different factions so that each faction would know what percentage of plum positions within the party and within government they would be getting. So again, we're starting to see the return of factional politics. But what this has also done is this has meant that Lai has consolidated power far more strictly and around him and his people.
Since Lai came to power, China has carried out large-scale military drills around Taiwan, and it's also been increasing its Coast Guard patrols in waters around Jinmen. How do you think Lai has dealt with the cross-strait challenges he's faced?
I think he's slightly more plain-spoken or blunt than Tsai was, but even then he's still being fairly diplomatic and basically is following the same line as Tsai Ing-wen did. This is the Republic of China, Taiwan, and that Taiwan does not need to declare independence because the Republic of China Taiwan is already an independent country. Well, Lai sold himself, when it comes to cross-strait relations, as continuing Tsai Ing-wen's pattern, and that's basically what he's done. So he's lived up to not only what he campaigned on, but also I think the expectations that people had of him. Now, there were some people who were afraid that he was going to be far more radical than Tsai, but that has not panned out.
That was Courtney Donovan-Smith, a political analyst based in Taichung. A fresh Chinese spy case has reached the courts just days after members of another spy ring were sentenced to jail. At least one official says it's time for action against China's frequent plots to steal military secrets. John Van Trieste reports.
Prosecutors say this is the would-be ringleader of a new Chinese spy ring, caught before his plan got off the ground. He's a former officer in Taiwan's military who's made a career in China. He's spoken to Chinese media in the past, saying Taiwan shouldn't unfairly block cross-strait exchanges. But prosecutors say that more recently, it's exchanges of Taiwan's military secrets he had in mind. They allege that he planned to infiltrate the ranks with help from two accomplices. Both are members of the fringe Chinese Unification Promotion Party, who prosecutors say accepted wining and dining at China's expense in return for their services. It's something the party's leader denies. What is certain is that this isn't an isolated case. In recent years, Taiwan has unearthed a long string of Chinese espionage cases. Many involve active or former military members, including a case that just ended last week with sentences of up to 13 years. Defense analysts say this model, recruiting Taiwanese people to do China's spying, is cost-effective for Beijing.
透过台商或是说部分的一些比较旅游从业人员去从事这种所谓的比较间谍组织的吸收跟发展其实是很快速的。他不是编制内人员嘛，所以其实他不用领薪水，而其实相对来说其实他的建制成本比较便宜。
But the regular pace at which China is putting these rings together has at least one official alarmed and calling for action. Lai Ching-te, a member of the government's watchdog and auditing body, says that since 2011, the number of Chinese spies Taiwan's uncovered has grown 12-fold. And Lai says that all the while, the budget for protecting against them has been cut.
我国在反情报这方面的机制上有一些问题，人员也相对来讲，我们的编线比也不足，或者是我们的经费其实也不然。
China has shown a determination to keep recruiting and sending spies, no matter how many are caught. To counter them and protect its national security, Taiwan will have to start from within its own ranks. Justin Wu and John Van Trieste for Taiwan Plus.
An article in a leading medical publication says Taiwan's healthcare system could soon face a crisis. The article in The Lancet says Taiwan's low premiums leave the insurance system with budgetary problems. It says hostile work environments and difficult conditions also mean many doctors and nurses are quitting medicine. The average insurance premium for one person in Taiwan is only $40 a month. The article asks whether the current system is sustainable, but the government says it's ready to make necessary changes. That includes raising costs for coverage.
健保的缴的费用整个总额是不是足够？这几件事情当然就是这一段时间以来我们一直在检讨的事情。在我们的开源节流出现有必要的情况之下，当然就要依法去调整保费的收入。
The Economy Ministry is sending a delegation to Europe to clear up disputes over the country's wind energy projects. That's after the EU said Taiwanese requirements violate international trade rules.
什么样的方式呢？可以对我们国内的厂商呢，以及对国外的这些厂商，大家都能够这个接受。所以这一部分呢，我想我们会充分的这个准备，然后到欧盟去跟他们做一个比较好的协商。
Taiwan requires that wind developers use locally produced materials in their projects. The EU says such policies violate World Trade Organization rules as they discriminate against imported goods from Europe. Some local analysts say Taiwan may need to compromise on their localization policies.
说服对方接受我们国产化这样子的一个要求，对方点头的几率其实不高了。到最后就是我们经济部这边可能最后还是会妥协，然后对于国产化的要求就不再那么坚持。
Coming up after the break. Taiwan's military practices defending its coastline, but experts worry the drills may not be enough.
Taiwan Top 5 brand new season. I like it. I'm genius!
Oh my god.
Novel, interesting, and incredibly beautiful. Come on, come on, come on.
Super delicious, super minty, super fresh.
Whoa. Wow! Stay tuned. Do not miss it. Taiwan Top 5 coming up.
All new season. Taiwan Top 5. Every Tuesday, 8:15 p.m. on Taiwan Plus.
Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. Taiwan's military has finished its annual Skyhorse shooting drill, which uses U.S.-made missiles to hit coastal targets. It's part of the country's efforts to defend its shores, but as Jaime Okan reports, it might not be a realistic strategy.
Taiwan's troops get some practice firing advanced weapons. The military is wrapping up 2 days of coastal defense drills using brand new U.S. TOW missile launchers to train for nighttime and daytime conditions. It's a first for every soldier here, and this exercise is a chance to improve their marksmanship.
各位弟兄都非常期待今年的实弹射击。那在部队作战训练的时候，也会争取时间，不断的操作新装所配发的模拟器，持续的适应及训练熟悉新装所带来的差异性。
Taiwan has been trying to conduct more realistic training to counter the threat of invasion from China. This includes giving soldiers more freedom to react on the battlefield and using more live ammunition. The goal of this drill is to practice destroying incoming Chinese ships and troop carriers. But analysts in Taiwan say it's far from realistic.
这是一个射击的演习，真正在 war time 的时候不会这样子在海边就是排开，它会在躲在树林后面攻击，不会把自己暴露出来。
This type of one-dimensional training is a source of concern here in Taiwan and in the U.S., Taiwan's largest weapons provider. U.S. analysts say that while Taiwan may be getting used to the weapons it has, it's not getting used to strategies for using them.
You really don't want the first time these service personnel are actually moving, stopping, shooting, and going back into hiding to be under combat conditions. You want them to have practiced that because naturally when they're under pressure, they're just going to default to what they practiced. If they only ever practice just sitting static on a beach, that's how they're going to do it.
One solution could be to increase the amount of practice troops get on wartime scenarios. That means simulating fighting from multiple positions, in addition to routine training like this one here. But in order to do that, analysts say Taiwan needs to buy more weapons.
I think Taiwan needs massive stockpiles of these things, certainly much larger than the one it's building. And the other thing about, more is better is like, if you have more stuff on hand, you can expend more in training, right? Like you can do that kind of stuff. And so it's having just that, the mass of these systems is going to be important.
Taiwan already has some 2,700 TOW missiles, and a recent purchase of 1,700 more is a step in the right direction. But officials here declined to give an update on the status of those weapons. Many U.S. weapons purchases are currently delayed. With Taiwan set to have more than 4,000 TOW missiles in its arsenal by the end of this year, it's yet to be seen whether the military will actually change the way it conducts its training and adapt to the threats it faces now across the Taiwan Strait. Joseph Wu and Hami Okan in Pingdong County for Taiwan Plus.
Prosecutors in Taipei are charging 17 people with fraud over a scam involving fake real estate transactions. The people are suspected of creating false contracts for development projects in Taoyuan. These allowed them to inflate the value of the projects and fraudulently obtain bank loans worth more than $20 million. Prosecutors say the scam affected over 100 homes and businesses. At least 4 people are dead after Russia attacked Ukraine with over 200 missiles and drones. Tiffany Wong reports on one of the biggest strikes of the Russia-Ukraine war.
A massive air attack on Ukraine. People in the capital Kyiv took cover in metro stations as Russian missile and drone strikes continued overnight. The attack left at least 4 people dead and over a dozen injured.
Зараз ще триває ліквідація наслідків російського удару. Загалом було більше ніж 120 ракет різних типів і більш ніж 100 шахедів.
It's one of the biggest strikes Russia has carried out since it invaded Ukraine in 2022. The barrage appeared to target energy infrastructure, but also struck residential buildings and hotels, leaving emergency services scrambling to aid civilians.
Підрозділи довго не могли виїхати на місце ліквідації через те, що була дуже затяжна повітряна тривога. Для нас це дуже велика небезпека, тому ми перебували в безпечних місцях, і тільки коли нам дозволили вже виїхати, ми приїхали для ліквідації.
The U.S. National Security Council is condemning the Russian strikes and says it will provide more military aid to Ukraine and boost its energy infrastructure.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms Russia's continued war against Ukraine and its efforts to plunge the Ukrainian people into darkness, as the fall here sits upon us and as winter approaches. As the president has said, Russia will never succeed in Ukraine, and the spirit of the Ukrainian people will never be broken.
Ukraine has made significant advances in recent months, carrying out cross-border attacks into the Kursk region in southern Russia, causing thousands to evacuate.
У нас ничего нет, мы приехали голые, все. Дома все осталось, лошадь сдохла, поросята тоже. Так что у нас ничего не осталось.
Без всего остались, да. Без всего. Вот в чем удрали и остались.
But with Russia and Ukraine both advancing and determined to fight on, civilians stuck in between will continue to have their lives upended as the war approaches its third year. Delphine Chen and Tiffany Wong for Taiwan Plus.
French President Emmanuel Macron is refusing to name a prime minister from the country's left-wing alliance that holds a majority of parliamentary seats. France has been in political deadlock since Macron called a snap election almost 2 months ago. The parliament is roughly divided into three. The left-wing alliance won the most seats, but Macron says a government formed by them would lead to an immediate vote of no confidence. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has issued a stark warning about the danger of rapidly rising sea levels to Pacific Island nations.
The world must look to the Pacific and listen to science. This is a crazy situation. Rising seas are a crisis entirely of humanity's making. A crisis that will soon swell to an almost unimaginable scale with no lifeboat to take us back to safety.
Guterres was speaking at the Pacific Islands Forum in Tonga. He called on big polluters to cut their emissions or risk global catastrophe. His remarks come as 2 new reports have found that sea levels are rising at an unprecedented rate due to human-induced global warming. That, combined with warmer and more acidic oceans, poses major threats to the livelihoods of people in the Pacific. Malaysia's opposition leader and former prime minister has been charged with sedition. A court in Malaysia charged Muhyiddin Yassin for allegedly insulting the country's former king in a speech earlier this month. Muhyiddin has pleaded not guilty to the charges. The monarchy holds a largely ceremonial role in Malaysia, but negative comments about royalty can be prosecuted under a colonial-era sedition law. If convicted, the former prime minister could face up to 3 years in prison. Vietnam's political reshuffling continues after the ouster of 2 deputy prime ministers and the appointment of 3 new ones. This brings the number of deputy PMs working under Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh to 5. The shakeup comes during a period of political disorder in the wake of former President Nguyen Phu Chang's death last month. He was replaced 2 weeks later by current President To Lam. A senior parliamentary official says they will appoint a new president in October. In the run-up to the Paris Paralympic Games, Lebanese runner Ars Zaradine is getting ready for his shot at gold. Bryn Thomas looks at how he's persevered through years of grueling training, an amputation, and now the threat of war.
Set, up. Every day, Ars Zaradine hits the track in his home city of Beirut. The 25-year-old is training to represent Lebanon in his 2nd Paralympic Games. He ranked 5th in the men's 200-meter in Tokyo 2020 and is eyeing top spots in the men's 100 and 200-meter runs this year in Paris.
أنا بس بدي أروح ومثل لبنان بالورد تشامبيونشيب وبالبارالمبيك جيمز as a qualifier, not as a wild card athlete. So هذا أخذ شغل كتير كبير معي، بس بطوكيو طلعت توب 8 fastest ب 200 meters بالكيس تبعي اللي هي T64, 1 amputation of leg below knee.
Having already persevered through the loss of his leg in a car accident when he was free, Ars now contends with the threat of war. The nearly year-long struggle between neighboring Israel and Hamas in Gaza is threatening to spill over into Lebanon and turn into a larger regional conflict. Just days before the start of the Paris Paralympic Games, Israel and Lebanese militant group Hezbollah exchanged missile strikes, a significant escalation in violence after 10 months of hostilities, pushing international airlines to suspend flights in and out of the region.
ديلي عنا خوف أنا والكوتش إذا معقولة يسكروا المطار أو معقولة يسكروا البار قبل ما أنا سافر على البارالمبيكس. شو معقولة نعمل؟ بس إذا بدنا نضلنا عايشين بالخوف ما رح نقدر نعمل performance، ما رح نقدر نعمل حيالله training.
Relations between Lebanon and Israel are tense in the best of times and devolve into outright war in the worst. That last happened in 2006. It's a grim reality which everyday Beirutis like ours have endured for years. So for the moment, while Israeli bombs pound his country's frontiers, ours pounds the pavement.
في عالم في generation عم تكبر معي. So I have to always be positive. فرجي إنه with one leg or without على الويلتشير أو لا, you have to always look forward لقدام. بس فيك تطلع لورا بس تشوف أنت وين كنت وين صرت.
Despite the unstable training grounds, ours will tell you he's gotten faster. And perseverance, first through an amputation, then through years of training, and now through the threat of another war, is fueling his motivation to tackle the challenges of Paris head on. Howard Chang and Bryn Thomas for Taiwan Plus.
Thousands of people in Italy have enjoyed a taste of Taiwanese culture this month after performances by a folk dance troupe. The group, made up of high school and college students from Tainan, performed at 3 large art festivals in Italy. One dance showcased Hakka tea-picking culture. In another, the group wore costumes inspired by Tainan's phoenix flower. Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. Finally, let's take a look at the beautiful sunsets over the skyline of Caracas, Venezuela. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.